Beyond the sixth sense.
My name is Samantha. For as long as I can remember, I have lived between two worlds. One is the world we all know, the world of people, cities, responsibilities, and everyday life. The other is far more mysterious, a world of memories, emotions, and souls that sometimes leave traces behind. When I meditate, I can occasionally sense things that cannot be explained, fragments of forgotten stories, echoes of events long buried, and sometimes, when a soul is desperate enough, a message. Welcome back to Beyond the Sixth Sense. In today's episode, I want to share one of the most emotional and unforgettable investigations of my journey as a paranormal investigator. Unlike my previous cases, this one wasn't brought to me by a frightened family or a desperate phone call. It was assigned to me by a ghost. A restless spirit named Victor reached out to me again and again, appearing in unexpected places, silently asking for my help. It took me time to understand why he had chosen me, but once I did, I realized he wasn't seeking revenge or justice. He was trying to fulfill one final wish before he could finally find peace. Victor was a gifted young musician who dreamed of becoming a successful music director. He left his home country against his parents' wishes to pursue that dream in another land. They begged him to stay, but Victor believed that if he worked hard enough, one day he would return home successful and make them proud. It all began to me on what seemed like an ordinary Tuesday evening. I had just returned home after finishing another investigation. As I walked toward my apartment building, I noticed a young man standing beneath a streetlight. He looked no older than 25. He wore a dark jacket, his posture perfectly still. His face was pale, and although I couldn't explain why, his eyes were filled with unimaginable sadness. For only a second, I looked down to search for my apartment keys. When I looked back, he had vanished. At first, I blamed exhaustion. My investigations often left me mentally drained, but the sightings continued. A few days later, I saw the same young man sitting alone at a bus stop while heavy rain poured around him. Oddly, not a single raindrop seemed to touch him. He simply stared at me. Not with anger, not with fear, almost as if he was begging me to notice him. Just as I started walking toward him, a city bus passed between us. When it moved away, he was gone again. Weeks passed. No matter where I went, I felt someone watching me. Sometimes I caught his reflection in the glass of a cafe. Sometimes he stood silently at the far end of a subway platform. Once, I even saw him standing outside my apartment door late at night. Every time our eyes met, he never spoke. He only looked at me with silent desperation. I began losing sleep. Even during meditation, I felt someone trying to reach me. Then, one night, everything changed. I woke suddenly. The digital clock beside my bed read exactly 3:13 a.m. My room was completely silent, until I realized someone was standing beside my bed. It was him, the same young man. For the first time, he spoke. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Please, help me." I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. He slowly raised one trembling hand and pointed toward the window. When I looked outside, I could see the outline of an apartment complex only a few blocks away. When I turned back, he had disappeared. The following evening, I drove to that apartment complex. As soon as I stepped onto the property, a strange heaviness surrounded me. Then, I saw him again. He stood quietly near one particular entrance. Without speaking, he pointed toward a door. Apartment 111. A moment later, he vanished. I stood there frozen. Something inside me told me that whatever had happened, the answer was behind that door. I spoke with the building manager. At first, he smiled politely, assuming I was asking about a rental. But when I mentioned apartment 111, his expression changed. He became unusually quiet. After a long pause, he told me the apartment had remained locked for nearly a year. Its owner, a young musician named Victor, had been found dead there. No family had ever come to claim his belongings. When the manager showed me Victor's photograph, my heart stopped. It was the same young man who had been appearing before me for weeks. That night, I entered a deep meditation. As my breathing slowed, the darkness around me became strangely quiet. The familiar sensation returned. It always began the same way. Fragments, shadows, broken memories that did not belong to me. Slowly, the darkness transformed into the hallway of apartment 111. A calendar on the wall told me this wasn't happening now. It had happened almost 1 year earlier. I watched as Victor returned home, carrying a backpack filled with music sheets. He looked exhausted but hopeful. He had finally been offered an opportunity to compose music for a small independent film. He smiled to himself as he unlocked his apartment. Across the hallway lived another tenant. His name was Ethan. At first glance, he appeared ordinary, but as the vision continued, I sensed a constant storm inside his mind. Everything around him had to be perfectly arranged. Every object, every sound, every routine. If anything changed unexpectedly, unbearable anxiety consumed him. I saw him repeatedly checking locks, straightening books, counting footsteps, lining up kitchen utensils with impossible precision. His apartment looked less like a home and more like a carefully measured pattern. Then, Victor entered the picture. Victor loved music. Late at night, he practiced jazz on old speakers while writing melodies. To him, it was inspiration. To Ethan, it became chaos. The vision showed weeks passing. Ethan politely asked Victor to lower the volume. Victor apologized. He genuinely tried, but musicians often lose track of time. Sometimes he forgot. Sometimes friends visited. Sometimes laughter echoed through the walls. Each small interruption slowly overwhelmed Ethan's already fragile mental state. His obsessive rituals became longer. His sleep disappeared. His anxiety deepened. Every unexpected sound convinced his mind that his carefully controlled world was collapsing. The apartment building itself became a prison inside his thoughts. Then the vision accelerated. One rainy night, everything changed. Victor had returned after celebrating his new career opportunity. Music played softly in the background. Across the hallway, Ethan experienced what felt to him like complete psychological collapse. I could feel his panic, his fear, his desperate need for silence. His mind could no longer separate reality from obsession. The next moments came to me only as scattered flashes. A hallway, a door opening, raised voices. Victor looked confused rather than frightened. Then, everything faded into darkness. I never saw every detail, only the overwhelming sadness that followed. Blood everywhere. Ethan killed Victor with a sharp kitchen knife. Cops arrived. Ethan was arrested. Victor's life ended inside apartment 111. The apartment became silent. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. His parents, living thousands of miles away, continued waiting for a phone call that would never come. That unbearable loneliness was what held Victor's spirit to this world. When I opened my eyes, tears were running down my face. The meditation had shown me two tragedies: one young man whose dreams ended far too early, and another man whose untreated mental illness had consumed his life until he could no longer distinguish overwhelming obsessive fear from reality. Neither soul had found peace. But Victor still had one final wish. He wanted his parents to know what had happened. Only then, Victor appeared. He didn't speak. Instead, he stood beside what looked like a wooden picture frame. Again and again, he held his hands around it, as though asking me to look more closely. He wasn't asking me to find money, or evidence, or revenge. He wanted me to notice the photograph. When I opened my eyes, I finally understood. Victor wasn't asking me to solve his death. He was asking me to deliver one final message. The next morning, I contacted the police. Because the apartment was still part of an active investigation, officers agreed to accompany me inside. The moment the door opened, time seemed to stop. Dust covered every surface. Music sheets lay scattered across an old piano. Half-finished compositions remained exactly where Victor had left them. Coffee cups sat untouched. A jacket still hung near the entrance. It felt as though he had simply stepped outside and never returned. Then I noticed it. A framed photograph resting quietly on a bookshelf. Victor stood smiling between his mother and father. I carefully lifted the frame. Remembering my meditation, I removed the backing. Hidden behind the photograph, written neatly in Victor's handwriting, was an address. His parents' home, in another country. Suddenly, every piece fell into place. Victor's spirit had not remained because of anger. He remained because his parents still believed he was alive. Their hope had become the chain keeping his soul here. Working with the police and international authorities, we contacted officials in Victor's home country. Within days, his parents received the heartbreaking news they had feared but never expected. Their only son was gone. They traveled across the world to the city where Victor had spent his final year. When they entered apartment 111, they broke down in tears. His mother held his music sheets close to her heart. His father quietly touched the old piano that Victor had dreamed would one day bring him success. They told me that, despite everything, they had never stopped loving him. Every birthday, every holiday, they had left a place for him at the table, always believing he would eventually come home. A few days later, according to their family's traditions, they performed Victor's final rites. They prayed for him. They forgave him for leaving without saying goodbye. And they asked him to finally find peace. That evening, as I walked home beneath the fading light of sunset, I saw Victor standing beneath a street lamp one last time. He looked different. The sadness had disappeared from his eyes. He smiled gently, placed one hand over his heart, then gave me a small nod of gratitude. Without a single word, he slowly dissolved into the evening light. I known him again. Some spirits seek justice. Some seek revenge. But Victor wanted only one thing: to let his parents know that he never stopped loving them.
Beyond the sixth sense. Samantha closes her eyes, slow breath, sitting still in the dark. She can feel them, cold air, sudden chill. Beyond the sixth sense. six. Beyond the six.